So, my name is Oliver, for those that don't know me, Oliver Thompson. I'm based in Sydney. I have had about 8 years in the wedding industry as a marriage celebrant, moved into the funeral space about 3 to 4 years ago, I think. When I first started doing my marriage celebrant course, I was always really interested in the funeral space, mainly because I had been to a couple of funerals and felt that there was so much more that we could do in them. And there was such a great opportunity to be able to represent somebody's life and honor them, and to create a space where people, I guess, are on their healing journey, and we can play a really important part in creating that space and helping them through that. It took me a long time after doing my marriage celebrant course to get involved in the industry, maybe because I really struggled to find the best companies and the best people to work with. And unfortunately, we didn't have sort of the networks that we do today, like this one here, for example. So ever since getting involved, I've just been so overwhelmed by the passionate people that seem to exist in the space and those that are interested in getting into the space. And that was part of the reason, I guess, why Yaz and I decided to create the Funeral Fix Express, because we didn't find that there was, sorry, Funeral Fix. We didn't find that there was really funeral celebrant training that covered everything that you needed to know about funeral celebrancy. So even though both Yaz and I did courses ourselves, we kind of were left with still so much more, I guess, so many more questions about how to develop your business. How do you market? How do you get connected with funeral companies? How do you start getting work? How do you write ceremonies that are actually hitting the mark, as opposed to just following a set template, or, you know, rehashing something that you might have seen or you might have done before. So that's a very brief introduction of me and sort of why I'm here and why we're doing this. Yaz.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to connect with you all. I'm Yaz Trellope. I'm the owner of Rite of Passage Funerals and co-owner of Funeral Fix and the Earn Collective with Ollie. Prior to working in funerals, I was actually a journalist, and I guess it's that real passion for asking questions and seeking answers that led me down the path of becoming a funeral planner and celebrant. And I have to say, it is truly the most humbling and beautiful industry to work in. And whether you're in the industry, you're new to the industry, you're looking at maybe seeing if it's the right thing for you, I think if you kind of do have that calling, it can be a really beautiful space to work in. While not always easy, it's definitely fulfilling. And I think that that's when Ollie and I kind of connected. We really had that shared passion for this kind of work and helping people to discover that you can make a change in your community, even if it's just as like a small change or a big change. I think kind of when you start to explore the world of death care and funeral celebrancy, in this case, it can be really transformative for you personally, as well as obviously your clients. So we want to create an opportunity to connect as much as possible. And as Ollie said, that's a really good way to do this, kind of smaller groups where we have these Q&As. We're not claiming to have all the answers. You know, we have experience obviously in the industry, but we also want to hear from you. So this is very much an interactive Zoom call. So feel free, as I'll said, just to chime in at any time, and together we can learn something in the next 45 minutes. So we definitely want you guys walking away from this having felt like you learned something new, and we hope to get some of that as well. So I guess to kick it off, we just wanted to see if anyone of you wanted to introduce yourself, share what your experience is. We can see we have some of our existing Funeral Fix students here, as well as some newcomers who may not know us and we don't know you yet. So feel free, if you want to jump in and have a very quick introduction of yourselves.
Hi, I'm Fiona Hall. I live in beautiful Dora Creek in Lake Macquarie, so between Sydney and Newcastle. I'm primarily been a marriage celebrant, but I have conducted quite a few funerals and memorials over the time I've been involved in the industry. And more importantly, I guess I'm looking to move into that space as I've given away my weekday job. And it's just funny how, and I'm sure it happens to most of you, as you put that out, it's starting to come to you. I've actually got a very special ceremony tomorrow, which is actually a wedding, but it's actually for my very close girlfriend who's in palliative care's son.
Wow.
And I know that there's the possibility that, you know, I will be doing her funeral, or perhaps will be asked to. But I have done quite a few very close friends and family, and I've been quite amazed at and I don't know how you explain it, but the humility that it brings you, and the joy, if I can use that word, but just being able to help other people. So I'm looking to try to expand my my work in that field, but very conscious that I've done some training. I did a deaf walker course with Zenith Virago. And other than that, I've done a lot of association courses and picked up lots of Zooms and things. So thank you for putting us on, because I'm really looking forward to learning a lot. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Fiona. We've got Jeannie Claire. Did I pronounce that right? Jean?
It's Jeanne Claire, but I tend to go by JC because it is a little bit hard to say. But no, that's I just wanted to, I guess, as you know, to introduce myself, JC. I'm a marriage celebrant. I haven't been doing it for very long, but obviously I know that the process of being a marriage celebrant, you have at least often 1 month's notice to prepare for that upcoming marriage. And I know we're sort of introducing ourselves at this point, but something that I'd be really keen to hear from you both about is what your day-to-day work life looks like when you're dealing in the funeral space, when you don't have that same amount of notice. And yeah, that's just where I would be keen to learn more from you, the two of you, as to what that looks like.
That's a really great question. I think, is it okay if we address that after we've done a little intro with everyone?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Excellent. Was there anybody else that sort of wanted to share a little bit about themselves or introduce themselves?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's
Hi,
Danielle. Funeral and wedding celebrant, North Brizzy based. I've done about 20 services so far. And I like the funky stuff. I like the ones that are a bit different. They're not run-of-the-mill, or want of a better explanation, the tick and flick sort of things. I like the funky stuff. I want to do something that's weird, and I'd like to, I'd like to hear what other people have done that's a bit different that they can add to their services.
Yep, great.
Awesome. Heather, you raised your hand.
Morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm Heather. I'm in south of Sydney. I'm still doing my celebrancy training, but I can see a big gap in, supporting celebrants and service providers to do funerals with the due respect and care that they deserve. And I'm all about giving back to the community. So, I'm open to doing any kinds of services, of course, as we probably mostly are. Yeah, so I just want to fill in those gaps and build my knowledge and skill base to be able to do that to the best of my ability and to look after the people I'm working with.
Sounds amazing.
Awesome.
We've got Robbie.
Yeah, hi everyone. Robbie Fincham from, I'm down in Melbourne, Victoria, and I've been a marriage celebrant and a funeral celebrant now for 12 years. However, I've done about 20 funerals and memorials. So it's mainly, and that's due to just having difficulty getting into that funeral space. Mainly, and most of my work funeral wise comes directly from families, who find me on Google, and I've done a few repeat funerals for them as well, when mum's died and then a few years later dad dies. And what I wanted to say for me, it is incredibly rewarding, as you mentioned, and but what it's given me is actually appreciation of my own life, much, much more. Like, every day I kind of think, now, what am I going to do today, that's meaningful? And it's like, it's a gift, it's a gift. We're alive. And the appreciation for life, that's and alongside, of course, helping helping and being a support to those families, the worst moment in their lives, really, saying goodbye to a loved one. So yeah, very rewarding, and it's given me a much greater appreciation for life.
Yeah,
Definitely.
wonderful.
Thanks. And thanks for putting this on today. It's great.
Thank you for
That's right.
coming. And Narelle?
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
I've been a celebrant since 2008 and never thought I had the demeanour to be a funeral celebrant until it was necessary for me to do my father's funeral and then my mother's funeral.
Wow.
And I've done quite a few now, and I feel gratification every time I do it. And it's a strange word, I know, but it is so gratifying to see the joy on people's face after the funeral. I have done one funeral course, and I'm booked in for the Sydney get together, as well as I'm doing the online course.
Yeah, we're so
Excellent.
looking forward to having you.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I find that the other training I did, and the trainer was amazing, and he was a very good friend of mine, but it was a little old-fashioned.
Oh, well, we are just so excited to have you all here. So I think let's get started on some questions. JC, maybe we will start with yours, because I feel like it's wonderful questions I'm sure all of you have. So
Yeah, sorry, before we do that, I just thought it might be necessary because Narelle talked about the Funeral Fix Express. For those that may not know what that is, should we explain that a little bit?
yes, absolutely. So Ollie and I, as you know, we have the Funeral Fix, which is our online course. You can sign up to that at any time, and it really does take you through every single element of becoming a funeral celebrant. And that this course came about from our own experience. So there is a lot of information out there, but we couldn't find one course that literally taught us everything from how to write the ceremony, to hold space for your families, to dealing with grief and self-care, and also marketing yourself in this space, because it is a bit of a niched I guess, area. And Ollie has a marketing background and I have a marketing and media background. So that experience comes into play here as well, because obviously we want all of you to be successful so that you can help more people. So with the course being as successful as it is, a lot of the feedback we were getting was that we wanted some of our students also were yearning for that in-person opportunity. And maybe they hadn't signed up to the online course because they wanted to come and meet with us face-to-face and do like a day style workshop where we go through all of that course, which is why we created the Funeral Fix Express, which is a one-off, one-day workshop style event in Sydney on the 30th of August, where it's at QT Sydney. You get all the amazing food and everything is included in the day. You also get full access to the online course. And Ollie and I are working so hard. We finalized what that day looks like. And there's lots of activities. It's really interactive. And you also get that opportunity not just to have face-to-face time with us, but with your fellow students as well, so that you can have that opportunity to network and learn in an in-person environment. So we'll send you some information about that afterwards, but definitely worth touching on. And obviously Narelle is coming along. We have quite a few people coming already, and we're just really looking forward to hosting people in person, because there's something, as much as online like this is lovely, I guess there's something special about being face-to-face as well. So, JC, do you want to ask your question again so that everyone can hear it? Because there are a few latecomers to the call, and then we can get started with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'd love to know what your day-to-day work looks like when you don't have as much time, say, with a wedding to plan for the service that you're going to provide.
Ollie, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, I think, obviously there is a lot more lead time, generally speaking, with a wedding. If it's a legal ceremony, obviously there's at least a month, generally speaking. with funerals, it can be a matter of days and weeks, but it's usually obviously very short lead time. So there is that challenge of being able to secure the work, I guess, then be able to understand what it is the family needs, then be able to get the information that you need, and then be able to craft the ceremony to be able to deliver it all within quite a very short time frame, I guess. For me, it's really important that I have processes in place. So I do have really great questions that I ask my families, whether I'm meeting them in person, online, or whether that's sometimes just via email. I always ask the family what's going to work best for them, whether they'd prefer to have a questionnaire emailed to them, whether they'd prefer to do it over the phone, or whether they'd prefer to do it in person. Some families really prefer to just have the information written down and then they can just write and write and write and then give me everything that they can. Others go, you know, we'd prefer a conversation. But for me, it's really just having those processes, really good processes in place, and a good understanding of what it is I need to get from that family in order to be able to deliver the best ceremony possible for them in such a very short time frame. In the course, we talk about that first meeting with your clients, how to show up for them, how to manage expectations, how to set boundaries as well, which is really important, because with a short time frame, there can be a lot of stress that the family might feel, and they can sometimes expect a little bit more that might go beyond your scope of support or your role. And being able to set those boundaries really protects the relationship between you and that family, but it also ensures that you're meeting their expectations 100%. So if you set those boundaries and set those expectations very early on in the relationship building, you will find that you will have such a much richer experience and richer relationship with that family as well. And I'm not talking about a personal relationship, because we go into that in the course as well. It's not necessarily about developing personal relationships. It's about being that professional and being that pillar of strength to be able to, again, understand the family, understand the person who may have died, to be able to honor and deliver a ceremony that really signifies who they were and really represents them as well. So hopefully that answers your question about sort of how to deal with the short lead time when developing a ceremony. But for me, yeah, it's just having really good processes in place and knowing the right questions and knowing how to meet people where they're at that time as well. And I think that comes with experience, but it definitely comes with having the knowledge of where people are at, how grief can work in such strange ways with people as well. And then in turn, yeah, being able to get that information and delivering something for them. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was really good. Thank you.
I will just add as well, I think it does touch on Ollie's point about boundaries, but also letting the family know what is needed when, so that they know up front, okay, they're going to need to send those photos early, or they're going to need to provide you with the music so you can write the order of service sheet for the funeral director. Because it is such a short turnaround time, explaining that in a very gentle way to your family is like, I will need this at this point, because often obviously they're grieving, they may not understand the urgency or be able to gather that information as quickly as you need, which puts pressure on you and puts pressure on the whole process. So letting them know what's required up front, and again, that will come down to processes, will make the whole thing a little bit more streamlined and just allow everything to fall into place as it needs to. But you do get used to it. You definitely get used to that faster turnaround time and being able to sit down and craft a ceremony. Often I have things that I will do to help, like I know when it's my writing time, it's dedicated time, and you do kind of get into that flow. We talk about that in the course as well, getting into your flow, because you don't have the luxury of being able to labor over a ceremony for months or even weeks, but you get used to it.
The second question that came up when Danielle was introducing, Fiona, I see your hand. We might just go to Danielle first, if that's all right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, your question was around, from what I understand, what other people have done to lift their services or improve their services?
Yeah, just what you've done that's different, that's just added a different element that you don't get, that you may not see from the in a standard ceremony.
Yes, I mean, we've done, I think between us, Ollie and I've lost count of the number of funerals I've done, but I think I had an amazing ceremony actually. I planned the funeral as well, and it was a young, beautiful man in his 20s who had passed away, and he loved the Burning Man festival. So we had the Burning Man, like we had the Festival of Tom, and it was this whole day festival style event where his guests would come and they were painting rocks, and there was face painting, and so it was this whole day. But in the actual ceremony itself, throughout the day, everyone had contributed to this beautiful shroud that he was then going to be wrapped in and created in following the ceremony. So people had painted it, they brought things that were meaningful for them. So his best friend, and we'd let the people know beforehand that this would be taking place, to come prepared with the things that they wanted to add to the shroud. And at the end, there was obviously this beautiful shroud, but we wanted to incorporate that into the ceremony and make it a meaningful part of the ceremony, because it was such an important piece for the whole day, as well as for his family. And obviously it was what Tom was going to be cremated in. So, and then in casketed, obviously, but he was going to be wrapped in that. So after the ceremony, to conclude the ceremony, everyone had also been asked to bring drums. They wanted to do a big drumming circle. So we'd asked people to bring drums, and I'd brought lots of instruments and stuff. And at the end of the ceremony, to close the ceremony, everyone started to bang their drums, like a big drumming circle. And his mother and his sister had ceremoniously carried that shroud from where it was on the table, and then brought it into the center of this huge circle and ceremoniously kind of wrapped it, like folded it up. And it was so, I still get goosebumps. I'm actually getting goosebumps talking about it, because it was so beautiful and so moving, and such an important part of the ceremony for everyone there, and hearing the drums, and everyone was woo, and it was just so beautiful. And I think I've got lots of different examples, but that's one that really stands out for me, where you're looking for opportunities to really create connection. And for every family, that's going to be different. So finding what is it that's important for you? What do you want to get out of this ceremony? And how can we create unique rituals to really anchor this point in time and get that connection for this group of people here? And that was just one example that really stood out to me.
Yeah, great question. Fiona, I might just unmute you if you have a question.
I was just sort of following on a little bit from JC's question. And whilst I appreciate the need to have all our systems in place, I've also started to realise how important it is to make sure, and I don't even know if I should get a questionnaire, but if you're contacted by a funeral director, that you get from them as much as they know, because quite often because they've had that initial contact maybe, they know a little bit more than maybe they might be prepared to tell you just because they're in a hurry. But I just wonder, do you have any reflection on the value of either what we should be expecting to get from the funeral director, information, or questions that we could ask them? Do you have anything around that?
Yeah, in my experience, because I work for a few different funeral companies, I guess you'd say, as a celebrant, I have found that, yeah, every funeral director sort of has a different amount of information regarding the ceremony. So a lot of them might just be, okay, we've organized the burial or the cremation, we've booked the venue, the rest is up to you kind of thing. So definitely asking them as much information or as many questions as you can to get the information that they might have, whether that be, how long do we have the space for? Have they spoken to you about music? Have they spoken to you about any rituals? Because in conversations, naturally, those things, even with the funeral director, might come up. And sometimes the family might even be expecting the funeral director to pass that on to the celebrant, and not knowing that they're not going to naturally do that. So absolutely, it is so good in that initial call or in the second call or whatever it may be, to say, can I just get a bit of a rundown on what's happened so far, what's being discussed? Because the more information you have, the better prepared you are to go into that meeting with the family and say, this is what the funeral director has told me that you're after. Are you still looking at this? Are we still able to do these sorts of things? It will make your interaction with that family for one of the first times really much more rich.
I think even also as basic as how did the person die? As I say, most of the ones I've done, I've known. There's been a few that I haven't. And I just think that, that's probably the most important thing to know. It's just because they're old doesn't mean they died of old age. It could have, so they might have had a suicide or something. But I just think that's a really helpful thing.
Yeah, 100%, definitely.
And even knowing the state of the family, like stuff that you don't want to ask the family directly, obviously.
Yeah.
So I don't often ask my clients how their loved one passed unless it's something that needs to be shared. As the funeral director, I obviously know, and I only really do ceremonies for myself, but in that celebrant role, I personally kind of leave that more. So that would definitely be a question for the funeral director. But yeah, even as I said, other things that might just give you some idea of what to prepare for as well for yourself in terms of that self-care role and showing up for your family and being able to hold space for their grief. If you know where they're at, it will make it a lot easier for you, especially in those initial meetings.
Yeah, I did have one where the funeral director gave me a heads up that there was one member of the family particularly aggrieved and at odds with the others, and could even be a problem at the ceremony. So that was really helpful. So
yes,
yeah,
all of those wonderful family dynamics that we that we have to navigate in this role.
Thank you.
There was a question from Heather, which I'll just read now. Can you please speak about building relationships with funeral directors? From first look, it seems pretty cliquey. So I think before I go into that, I'll just say we've had insight from the industry that they're becoming much more aware of the importance of an incredible funeral celebrant. They will do all of the work in the back end, creating the ceremony or arranging the funeral, but it's the celebrant on the day that is presenting in front of potentially hundreds of people that is essentially representing their brand. More and more of these brands are realizing that the overall guest experience relies so much on the ceremony. They can do all that they can in creating an incredible cremation and all those sorts of practical things, but it's the ceremony where they're getting the most touch points with people. And like I said, that represents their brand at the end of the day. If there's a funeral company, you're going to a funeral and this funeral company's put this on, your overall experience as a guest at that funeral is because of that ceremony, which is more than likely going to be led by a funeral celebrant. So more and more the industry is seeing the importance of funeral celebrants. In response to your question, Heather, about building relationship with funeral directors, I think that one of the best ways you can get involved is to just contact them directly. And that might seem like a little bit of an old school sort of way, but it's door knocking and it's saying, this is what I do. This is who I am. This is the training and the experience that I have. Some people have even offered to do like ceremonies for free or to do mock ceremonies on video or in person, sort of like an interview kind of thing or an audition, if you will. And so we've seen a lot of people that have kind of gotten connected with funeral directors in that way. We had a student who contacted some funeral companies on the Gold Coast. She ended up, I think, working full time for that company in not only a celebrant role, but actually in, I think it was a funeral directing role from memory. But just making those connections in person, I think, is probably the best way to do it. And we talk about the marketing side of your business and really building your business in the course as well, and the importance of that. By having an identity and a brand and something that people will connect with, whether that be online or whatever media you may use, you will start to create a bit of a presence, and people will, funeral directors will certainly go, well, we need a funeral celebrant that's going to suit this particular person. You know what? Heather contacted us a couple of weeks ago. We met her. We saw what she's done. She's got lots of training. She's done the funeral fix. And then she's ready to go, essentially. But then there is the other side as well, which I think is probably really powerful, is about getting those clients come to you first. So somebody talked about, family members are coming to them, or previous clients, weddings, whatever it may be, coming to them and saying, we know that you work in this space. Can you help us with this? The benefit of that is, one, you can sort of set your own expectations. You can align them with the most appropriate funeral director as well. So it doesn't need to be any particular funeral director. If they're coming to you and saying, this has just happened, this person has just died, we need your help, and they're coming to you first, that is sort of the most powerful position to be in, because you can go, this is a funeral director that I connect with really well in your area. They're aligned with your values and your ethos. I would love to do the ceremony. This person's going to do the planning side of it if you're not a funeral planner yet. And I think that's probably the best way to do it, because you can set your own fee as well. You can set your own expectations, and you can help manage that process between inquiry through to the ceremony as well, as opposed to a funeral director making all of those decisions beyond you. Hopefully that helps.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It is all about the relationships, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question from Lauren, but Robbie, you raised your hand. Did you have a question or a comment on that?
Yeah, just following on what Oliver was saying just then, I'm just curious to know, how does a funeral director decide who to call, which funeral celebrant to call? Yeah, I'm just curious to know because I'm assuming there's some sort of match goes on between, the family and the particular celebrant that, might pop into their mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from my experience as a funeral planner. I can't say what the other kind of funeral planners do, but I know if I have a ceremony that I'm looking for, it's definitely and a celebrant, it's definitely about matching that family with the right celebrant, for sure. I think every funeral director will be a little bit different. Maybe, some might just have their go-tos and it's not so much about the match, it's just about the convenience, or they have the go-tos. Others may definitely want to have that match. I think it would be different for each funeral home. And I understand, both Ollie and I understand, that it can be tricky getting into some of those more traditional funeral homes, because they may have been working with the same celebrants for a really long time. But I think, as Ollie was saying, educating your community, just start with your community and start sharing with the people in your network that you're an option. And if you can start bringing in, business for a funeral director, they will start considering you. So it is a little bit of kind of go out and seek your own network and let them know. And then once you're kind of in, you can be in. But for me, it is about a match, definitely, as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
So I have a question from Lauren. She's in a super noisy cafe. Hi. So I will read it out for you if you like. It says, how do you make all family members feel included in the funeral planning? Do you ask the family, friends to nominate one or two people to speak on behalf? I've only ever delivered one funeral for my own family, and the delegation of funeral planning just fell to those that felt in the headspace to contribute. This is a really great question. So I think for me in this instance, I am guided by the family. I generally, though, only ask there's one person who is my client, maybe a maximum of two, because you don't want too many chefs in the kitchen. And then if they say one thing and another member says something else, it's like really confusing. And as going back to that short time frame, just one point of contact and they have the final say is, as a planner and a celebrant, will make your life so much easier. They then can absolutely chat to the family. They go back and speak to the family, and together they can make those decisions. But just for you, having one point of contact is really important. And that's generally how I found it works most of the time. Obviously, you get different family dynamics, but if you can assert that authority and set that boundary that you like who is in charge here, who is essentially my client. That will make it a lot easier. And from a ceremony side of things as well, like if you did want to have everyone included, there's absolutely ways that you can do that in terms of the different rituals or having the grandkids come up. Depending, all the venues I use as a planner, we don't have time restraints unless the family specifically want a chapel at Allambie. I'm on the Gold Coast, so but I don't really use memorial parks. They never really want that anyway. So we have the luxury of time. So often I will open up the floor to see. So we have the set speakers, and then anyone else that wants to come up and say a few words, they can do that. So it's really, really inclusive. But I think from the question, your question is specifically for the funeral planning side, I would say definitely have one point of contact and they can sort it out amongst themselves. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Does. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. And probably just to build on this, is this okay? Can you guys hear me okay?
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Could you hear that, Ollie?
No, sorry.
You can type it.
I'll type it.
Yeah, I think just on that as well, what Yaz was saying, when you have that first meeting, if you're surrounded by a table of 12 people, which I have had before, I sort of just open it up and say, how can I help? What can I do? And then you'll sort of notice the people contributing and saying what they want out of it. And then the ones that don't as well. Then you sort of get an idea of who are the ones that are leading this, and you get a bit of an idea on the dynamic of that family as well. Some might just be there to listen, to be a bit of a bystander, so to speak, but others might be the ones that are more leading the conversation and decision making as well. Oh, thanks, Lauren.
I will just quickly add, actually, in the typically really, really traumatic funerals, so I do quite a lot of babies and stillborns and things like that, suicides, it is also helpful to have a family advocate. So in the event that, say, the mother and the father, or they're just not in a position to cope at all with the planning of the funeral, having a family advocate there, and that's something that you can suggest if the funeral director hasn't. As the celebrant, you can as well, and sympathize with them that this is very challenging. So if there is a family advocate or someone that can speak on behalf of those family members, then that's absolutely an option as well.
We've only got about 5 minutes left before we wrap things up. I think there's some incredible sentiment that was brought up at the beginning about from those that spoke about how rewarding this role is, how gratifying doing funerals is, and even the joy that you get. And I think that the fact that we're all here talking about this on a Friday morning really just shows that there is such a group of passionate people across the country and the world who are just getting so much out of doing funerals for other people and seeing the joy on other people's faces in such a dark and potentially devastating time. So we are so appreciative of everybody contributing this morning and being part of this. And it's just so clear to see that there's so much passion here. We're so thrilled. Like we said, we will send you an email in the next 24 to 48 hours with a link to this recording, as well as some more information about the Funeral Fix and the Funeral Fix Express for those that might want to take the day off work and come and join us for that. But before we wrap things up, was there anyone else that wanted to ask any final questions or share any last final words with us? Thanks, Heather.
I just wanted to say thank you for putting this on this morning. It's really, really great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you all so much for showing up and for being here and for having these conversations. This is, Ollie and I love this, and having this connection with all of you is really beautiful. So thank you all, and we hope to connect with you again soon, and we'll definitely be doing more of these, so keep an eye out, and we might see some of you at the Funeral Fix Express or online as well in the course. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
We'll send the recording as well. There were some people who signed up that couldn't make it live, and if you wanted to watch it again, if you couldn't remember all of the answers, so the recording will be coming your way as well.
All the best. Keep in touch.
Yes. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Weekend.